joining me, Tim, for the first in the Education in the States in Conversation with series. For those that might not know you, can you please let people know what you do and how long you've been working in the education sector for?
Good morning, James, and thank you very much for the kind invitation. Warneford Consulting, we provide estate, energy and bid management services across the space. I exclusively work with schools. I don't work in any other sectors. This is kind of where I choose to spend all of my time. I come to this sector with degrees in both humanities and building surveying, and in my earlier career, where I was working client side, I was very often exposed to what the conditions were for social housing tenants. And I guess in some respects, I've got the same interests at heart for pupils now. Effectively, I've always been interested in someone's environment and what impact that'll have on their life chances going forward. Around 2014, my mother-in-law became one of the very first early executive heads. And she, in Michael Gove's own constituency of Surrey Heath, she was looking for the rather tricky job of land disposal. And so I found myself in a baptism of fire, brought into the education sector to try and understand how this might work. And it was at that stage, obviously, when academies were, or when grant maintained schools were converting at quite a clip, quite a rate. And I just found it an absolutely fascinating space to be in, and I've been here ever since.
You attend a lot of events in the sector. Can you share your most memorable, shocking or inspirational takeaways from a recent event you attended? It has to be one of ours, by the way. It doesn't have to be one of ours.
No, understood. I do. I am on the circuit. I do spend a fair amount of my time at all sorts of conferences, and I personally prefer the more intimate ones because I think you get an opportunity to speak to kind of everyone who's there, whether they're speakers, delegates, attendees, exhibitors, etc. And I think that's one of the things that you guys do particularly well, personally. Genuinely continuing that theme. And again, I would say that we're moving in the right direction. This is just exclusively from my experience, but my favourite takeaway experience was actually last year at the almost towards the end of the conference, where Jane Balston from the DfE was coming out to talk about what the DfE were going to do with regards to RAC, and I naturally put myself in the front row preparing a question, and she actually preempted it and said, "Tim, before you ask." This, I can assure you that the funds for RAC will not be coming out of the Condition Improvement Fund. And I think that is a really good example of the DfE being friendly, open, reading the room. And I genuinely think that in the last few years, that conversation between delegates, attendees, exhibitors, speakers, fellow speakers, etc., and the DfE has become much warmer and much more open. And I genuinely, again, believe that you have brokered that. And I think that is for the power of good, to be honest.
Thank you for those kind words. Now, you've had a distinguished career in the education sector. Which projects are you most proud of and why?
I run a relatively boutique consultancy. I tend not to be after the big flagship projects. It probably suits my personality as well, that we kind of work in the trenches, and therefore the joy, the absolute satisfaction that we can bring where we're successful with bids, etc., to schools and help transform their estates is remarkable. And it may be more of the prosaic end of things rather than, as I say, a great big, brand new law library or something. I think personally, Sutton Coldfield Grammar School for Girls is a really good example where we have over the years done things in the right order. So we adapted a fabric first approach. We insulated the building envelope, and therefore the school could obviously reduce energy costs. But the other thing that you get from taking that sort of methodological approach is that when we came round to upgrading their heating and hot water systems, it meant because we'd insulated it, the options were not restricted to a like-for-like gas boiler, but we could incorporate an air source heat pump, and therefore it was a win-win all the way through. And I think that in terms of my client or the evidence of what we've done in terms of transforming an estate, it's just a simple standalone academy where we have done our best work, to be honest.
And over the next year or so, what do you think are the biggest challenges the sector faces in the near and long term, and why?
Well, it won't come as any surprise to you, James, to hear that I'm going to lead on the fact that I genuinely believe that our school estate, which, as you probably know, is the largest one in all of the government portfolio, we have 50.1% of the floor area is in the education sector alone. I feel that we've been underinvested by previous governments, not exclusively the existing one at all, and therefore we find ourselves in the dire situation that we do. I think we have to be sensible about this. I think we have to accept that government has finite resources, and therefore we are going to need to look towards the market if we're ever going to be able to finance our way out of not just addressing the condition, but arguably more importantly, but certainly inextricably linked, but we've also got to look at how we're going to decarbonise the estate. And that is going to take strategic thinking and strategic investment rather than the siloed single pots. So I think there's a number of challenges ahead, but I do believe that we have the wherewithal to meet them.
I guess on the flip side, what are the biggest opportunities in the education sector currently, and why?
Yeah, I mean, following on from that challenge, I think we do need to discuss about how we can safely bring the market in, not repeating obviously PFI, but I think that again there are some mechanisms in place. We have, for example, the Public Works Loan Board, which is available to academy schools to fund SIF projects. There is an affordability criteria there, which is obviously only right. The ISBL themselves have a kite mark, where effectively they do an even more thorough job than school resource management. They go in there and they really get under the skin. And there's no reason why we couldn't operate a Moody's type like AAA rating, whereby trusts who do have the resources and who would pass that risk management would be able to borrow sensibly. There is a list of as long as your arm of potential lenders that already have a big footprint in the market. The blocker at the moment for that, the obvious blocker, is the Academies Trust Handbook, which is now, I think, in its 18th year. But at the moment, schools are forbidden from borrowing, and therefore it's going to take a redrafting of that to be able to open that market up. But I do believe that we have everything in place. I think we have the need, clearly, and I think we have the appetite from the providers that would like to do that. It's just a question of us coming together and finding a way through it. So I think there's a really good opportunity there.
And you attended last week's Net Zero conference. What would you say was your kind of key takeaway or kind of thought process from that conference?
So following on from Located's Net Zero Accelerator program, I think there is such an overwhelming recognition from all parties that we really, really, really need to do something about this. And going back to what I've just said in terms of the appetite and the need, those two things are there. It's about brokering the middle ground. And I think that in terms of willingness, I think it's there. I think this year, in terms of obviously we're going to have a general election, I think once we've gone through that, whether it's a new government or otherwise, an opportunity for the DfE to maybe listen to other people on the ground and everything else that's going on and the market, and to kind of bring something together, some sort of collegiate to bring something together to try and make this work.
Brilliant, thank you. And in your opinion, what do you think attendees would get out of attending an event such as Education Estates or others in this space?
I think there's a win for everyone, for every attendee, for delegates, exhibitors, those speaking, etc. And again, I think I'm going to reiterate what I've said. For me, if I'm presenting, I don't want it to be death by PowerPoint. I think as much engagement as you can get from the audience, and I think we can extend that to conferences. I don't like it when they're siloed. I think it's much better when there's a collective coming together. And again, you do facilitate that. And I genuinely think that the DfE always seem relatively confident and comfortable at your events, because there's a way of everyone talking to everyone. And it shouldn't always be a top down. Very often it's the bottom up way of things happening. And I think that that by coming to events like this, people get to understand what best practice is, people get to listen to speakers, and hopefully are afforded a voice to talk about their own specific individual issues, and that they can be addressed by speakers or preferably the DfE as well. So I genuinely think it's that collective, and the more relaxed it is, I think the better, the more successful.
And you're kind of well placed to give those opinions because you exhibit with us, you host roundtables, who sit in the advisory group, and so really are really helpful to help put together the programme. With your roundtable that you're going to be doing on the first day, have you decided what you're going to be focusing that on yet? Have you got any thoughts that you could share with the audience about your workshop roundtable on day one of the event?
So I always come from a show me the money, a funding perspective, because whilst we would love all of these things to go on, we have to understand how that's going to be funded, whether there's a funding pot, or whether, if, for example, the school is in receipt of SCA, and therefore it's about how they're going to get their best return on their investment. So this year, for me, I'm going to be the canary, in the coal mine again. I'm going to be, mine's going to be about PFI and how the sector needs to really gear up now to ensure that when those estates are handed back, they are in as good a condition as they possibly can be. And given the fact that PFI contracts can be 2,500 pages long, it's going to need some time and investment. But the risk of us not ramping up and meeting that challenge means that there's a good chance that those liabilities will remain in that estate. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It'll probably be another high noon PFI roundtable. I'm probably going to have Ian Dennison, who is frankly the authority on PFI. He was on Radio 4's The Great PFI Debate recently. I've done a podcast with him. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, James, and thank you again for affording us that sort of fringe opportunity, really.
And for those that are coming to Education Estates on the first day and would potentially like to be involved, put your comments in the comments chat, and then we'll share those with Tim, and we'll hopefully see you then. So we're going to do something different. It's the first time we're doing these in conversation series. So and something that I sort of picked up from the Diary of a CEO, but not quite that. So my next conversation with Sharon White later on today, from the Learning Crowd. What question would you like me to ask Sharon during our conversation, Tim?
Okay, it's possibly even following on from that very diary. I am always intrigued to understand. I want to ask her, which person? What was it? Did it go back to primary school? Was it a teacher? Was it a lecturer? Was it a colleague? Who has provided her with the best advice in her career? And can she give us an example of where she's still applying that today?
I shall put that question to her. And Tim, thank you very much for giving us the time today, and we look forward to seeing you at Education Estates in October.
Much obliged, James. Look forward to seeing you and the team. Thank you.
Take care.